Hello, welcome back to Cardiff City World. I'm your host, Evan James. Joined with me, pretty much as always now on the regular, is Aaron Anderson, CCFC. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Ev, yourself, how you doing?
Yeah, here and there, I'm doing well, but I'm just looking at our last results and thinking, like, we've basically been losing and winning and losing and winning and losing and winning. And that kind of just feels like me right now on my life. It's sort of like, it's the highs and the lows. I feel like I'm riding the waves as they come and go. But yeah, just lots going on. And yeah, so it feels like forever since we've had like an actual league game or a home league game or a one that we've played decent in. But we're third in the table right now, so I'm still happy about that. I'm sure people have mixed comments on that as well. I'll be honest, guys, tonight as well. I am completely winging it because I joined you last second. Apologies for a slight late start. I just had a few technical difficulties, nothing new there. But anyway, how many games we played? Oh god, 14 games so far, and
We played 13, haven't we?
13. Never mind, I read that wrong. Sorry, most teams have played 14, but we have a game in hand. Some teams have two games in hand. How do you fancy your chances so far? Do you think is this the best start we've had? Are you disappointed? Are you somewhere in the middle, or?
You'd have to say the start was very good. Recent results have not been great, but sort of scraped through certain games and left a lot on the, left a lot off the pitch, haven't we? In certain games, I think it's like you said, it's learning curves, it's transition, it's part and parcel of what you'd expect at Cardiff City. To be fair, isn't it? I think overall, a game in hand, potentially we win that, we go top. So, to be where we are, what we're, the environment we're talking about, the poor performances recently, and you've got to take it, haven't you? But it's not been great recently, but I'm pretty sure Brian will get this turn around.
Yeah, is it like I'm picking your brain a bit here now because I actually have all the fixtures up here that we've played so far. Is there any one fixture or any sort of moment? It doesn't have to be a specific game. It could be a moment in a game or thing. Anything that maybe surprised you or maybe a selection? Like I know for me, my sort of surprise thing is how much we've actually changed the squad, considering that we don't really have a big one. Was there anything like that that's sort of surprised so far? I think you didn't expect from BBM.
Well, I think if you were talking about a moment, I think the defining moment was the first international break. I think we went from that peak to a bit of a fall. Yeah, there's probably the bit that sort of stands out to me is the transition of the team, in the sense that as fans we can see what we believe is the greatest team, and there's a couple of partnerships there that shouldn't be broken, and Brian's sort of changed them. I'm not sure as to why he's tried to do that, but I think results have also shown that when you tinker with certain elements of it, it's not always worked. But then on the other side of it is substitutions have sometimes got us, dragged us out and got us some results. So there's moments here there, aren't there?
Yeah, are you surprised by our cup run so far? I mean, well, let's not say all cups, but let's say the Carabao Cup in particular. I am quite surprised we got this far. I'm surprised we beat Burnley, if I'm being honest.
Well, the cup runs, they're great, aren't they? And I think, we've approached them well. The team selections have been pretty strong, but it's a bag of mixed balls, isn't it? The Carabao Cup, we look very, very, very good. And, the reviews from other clubs, even, Wrexham recently, at least we look like a well-established championship team for someone who had so many young players from one. You sit there and you go to the other end of it and you put on a performance like that, which was clearly unacceptable, and I feel sorry for the fans that have travelled all the way for that, And the Virtue Trophy is another one of an inconsistent cup. The reality is the league is the bread and butter, isn't it? If we can do well in the Carabao Cup, fantastic. But the others, FA Cup, you'd like a run, but you're not going to sacrifice the league for that, are you?
No, I'm really surprised by how strong he's put sides out for most games. Cup and league combined. I think it worried me at first. I'm one of those people, right, where if you chuck your full, your a really strong squad out in like one of the early cup games, right? I'm one of those people that will worry, be like, why are we chucking all this out? And to me, I've always been like, prioritize the league, and then if you're known as a club like a Preston or a Bristol, for example, who, they're very rarely in threat of relegation or have a chance of being promoted apart from recently. Like there's a club that we used to sit in like a mid-table for championship. I'd always really fancy Cup One then. I felt like that was the highlight of our season, even though we never got too far. But I think for us now, it's like I have that sort of pessimistic mindset of when I see us put a strong squad against a team like Peterborough, for example. I was just saying like, okay, well, we cannot lose this game, and in hindsight, we did. I don't know why. Again, maybe new manager bounce, but I just really did not want to lose to Peterborough, whether they had new manager or not. For me, and this is no disrespect to Peterborough fans or the players, whatever, but I just look at this squad and think there's not really a single player in the squad. I think like, oh, we've got to be careful of that person because we saw how they played in the opening day, and like I know how much a new manager bounce can do for you, and it can re-motivate the players. But if I'm being honest, again, the 1-0 loss to Bolton, I guess you can kind of say is kind of like, well, it's typical for them to do that last minute of the game. But again, the Newport game as well, I feel like there's loads of games in there where we could have easily sealed off but didn't. What would you put that down to more as? Would you say that's just the team hasn't gelled yet, or we still, to be fair, the Virtue Cup one, we did put a lot of youngsters in there, but
I think you're right to an element. We were beaten by that goal at Bolton was a special goal. However, in the build up to that goal, there was 2 or 3 errors which never should have happened. It was probably we go through phases of maturing and learning and understanding the adults game. And I think the goals that we've conceded recently are our own personal errors. We are putting. It's not we can't hold our hands up and say that was a quality goal. They're really avoidable goals, and I think that's the biggest thing, and we've gone from a team looking solid at the back and a bit of transition, a bit of change, and all of a sudden we look very, very leaky. I think it just needs to settle down. I think he needs to sort of focus on a dynamic shape that suits the playing style, and then I think it will start looking like the team of old. Watching Dylan and Fish the other day, and also Chambers and Fish, you can clearly see that's the sort of 3 you need to sort of be building around at this moment in time. But it's great. We're focusing on that one area because we're not scoring goals at the moment. That's the problem.
I want to say, obviously, hi, evening to everyone in the chat. Really quick, just want to give you a mention. Well, evening, Jonathan, Paul, Graham, as always. Suze, nice to see you again. I think you've recently changed your name, is it? Because it was something else before, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, okay, look at the table then. If you had to pick, well, it's not limited to anything. Was there any, because I look in League One, right? And I see there's 3 teams that can do serious damage against us. This is before like the league even started. I kind of came to this conclusion, and those teams for me were Stockport, Luton, and Bolton. Those are the 3 teams. Maybe Huddersfield, possibly, but those are the 3 ones I had in mind. Thinking like those are the ones that I think I got a lot of quality in the squad. But if I'm being honest, there's not been really a single team that I've gone like, wow, they're absolute quality. Possibly Bolton, but I look back at the game and think they wasn't really. It was 2 teams that kind of wanted to defend in a way, and I feel like a lot of teams come to us and they just come with the idea of like, if we gain a point from Cardiff, that'd be great, because not everyone's objective is to get promoted. As the thing is, we have that pressure on us that we are a team that expects automatic promotion, whereas someone like a Lincoln, it's like they're doing really well. They're 5th right now, but their main objective probably wasn't to get promoted. They just want to build on the previous season. So do you think, is there any teams in this league you think that definitely can do a lot of damage, or that you thought of before we even started the season? Or
you would have expected Luton and Huddersfield to start better, and you'd also expect them to invest in January, wouldn't you? Stockport to me were a bit of an unknown quality. That there was players that they had that was decent around this level, but I didn't think they hit the floor as good as they have. But can they sustain it? Don't know. Look at us. We're talking about probably the best squad in that league. You're talking about the youngsters that we have that are going to mature. We're talking about what's going on behind the scenes where they're looking at complementing and improving that. We've also got a young manager. We've got to take that into consideration. He's going to get better as the games go on and reflect upon it. And we've also, we're going to be in a position where, that we will get stronger. if you're going to put your house on it, out of that top six sort of bracket, who are you going to back on? I think 90% of 99% of people would say Cardiff City. To be fair, but the reality is they've got to do it on the pitch, But I can assure you now that a lot of work's going on the training ground to make sure that these errors are being nullified.
Yeah, in terms of, let's say, individual player quality, right? Not just like playing as a team. Which team in this league, and you can't say our own, obviously, because I would say between us and Luton, which team would you say has the best or the most individual quality of talented players? Because I find for us, we got such young players, and we're third in the league, and I genuinely believe that we have got the strongest, talent and future ahead. Would you say us as well, or would you say someone like Huddersfield, Luton probably have a better quality but just aren't clicking? Because I look at Luton's squad and it's like they brought in some decent players to bring to League One, and I'm thinking like I would have thought they would have been right up there to start with.
Yeah, you would have said Luton, but I think the hunger and the quality that we have, we might have been in an unknown quantity in the summer.
Yeah,
the majority of the teams in this league would want to take our players. It's a very strange time because we talk about quality and investment of what clubs have done, but they also have to earn that value during the season. And for the investment that Luton have done, do any of their players really deserve that? The same with Huddersfield. I don't think so. You look at our team and we're talking about Fish now worth this. We're talking about Lawler worth this. Joel worth this. Ruben worth this. And they're at a Trot now worth this. You looking at some of these other clubs, you're thinking their value must be in decline. But ultimately, it's a results game, isn't it? And that's the main thing.
I mean, not everyone could say that they loaned Copenhagen's backup goalkeeper to a League One club, can they? Not everyone could say that. I mean, we could talk all night about Nathan Trott if we really wanted to, because I genuinely think he's been the best player for us thus far this season. And I'm not sure if you agree, or maybe there's an unsung hero that probably goes unmentioned. I don't think there's any player in particular that's done horrible this season. I mean, there's some that it just hasn't worked out for, I guess. But if I look at all the squad now, it's hard to really single out one player and say, they've been the best for us yet. Or would you disagree with that?
No, you're absolutely right. If I sat you and asked you now, who do you think the early candidates are for the player of the season? You're looking at Ruben, you're looking at Trot, you're looking at Dylan, aren't you? It's very it's a standout, Joel to an extent, but the reality is that they're all getting better game by game. Even majority of the that even the Newport game, the established players didn't cover themselves in glory, but the youngsters that came in did. And you find that with these youngsters are actually coming in, and more fans are being aware of these different names that they were never aware of. And okay, they might not be knocking on the door just yet, but they're very close to that first team. And they're on merit. They're not there to make up numbers, are they? And that's the good thing about it, at the moment.
Do you reckon it'll be a busy summer window then for next season in terms of? You look at, like you just mentioned, then the player values. If we do get promoted, or even if we don't, there's going to be some decent looking price tags on some of those players. What do you reckon? You think it'll be a busy summer next season?
Absolutely, and it won't just be for the outgoings. I think the incoming. Also, we're going to be in a position that Cardiff City have not been in for a very long time, where we're going to go past the days of loaning young players out to Haverfordwest and Barrytown. And no disrespect to these teams, but it's it's not the Championship, etc. But now we're starting to loan those players to probably League One clubs, and that look at Joel's loan recently and players like that. It's getting the best for Cardiff City and the youngsters. But if without promotion, does Fish stay? Does Dylan stay? Does Ruben stay? Does Joel stay? But even if they were to go, the transfer fees that would be recouped for them would be much far surpass the Ramsey fees and the Josh Murphy fees and all those sort of fees that we'd have spent and take. But I don't know, mate. If that is the case and that Cardiff City is selling players like that for a value, they must be doing something right on the pitch. That's the way I look at it.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a win-win and a loss at the same time, because it's that you want to keep hold of as many of these talents as you can. But I think some players, if they continue to develop at this rate, I don't want to be that whistleblower, but I can't really see them staying here for many more seasons unless we were to improve that much every season. And look, I'm theorizing now. Okay, this is a very dangerous thing, but let's just say if we were to get back-to-back promotions and do a Wrexham, but better because we'd be 2 leagues up, then obviously that's probably the most realistic example of keeping your Dylan Lawlers and your Ronan Capacios. And I think the one big plus about this is where we've sort of got a safety net is the fact that this is home for a lot of the players as well, which is insane to think that a lot of these are homegrown talents. So it's a massive incentive to say, like, I know that some of us have got a chance to speak to some of the players before, and it's just like they're very passionate about. I know obviously everyone's passionate about the club they play for, but the fact that it's their home club, and when they eventually get to play international football, they'll be playing in the same stadium. So there's a major incentive there to stay with the club. I think if we were someone like I don't know, even if we were a Plymouth or Luton, again, no disrespect, but like those players probably would have been gone by now if you think of it getting relegated to League One. I don't think you're keeping hold of most of those if you're a different club, but because it's maybe Cardiff and it's their home ground, maybe that's a massive incentive. I'm not sure.
And also, just to sort of add on to your comment, and this is factually driven, is that a lot of youngsters left Cardiff City because they weren't getting game time. We lost quite a few decent players at the time, the Regan Pauls and Matondos, that were sort of not getting that. At Cardiff City now, they're getting game time. They're seeing that there's a pathway. They're seeing there's progression. They're seeing, that what you expect as a 19 to 23-year-old actually getting there. And to be fair, if you're leaving Cardiff City in a ground that's, some games hitting 12 to 18,000, most times, where else are you going to go? Where you're going to be able to get that vibe, that comfort, that sort of training and coaching from someone who's been around, Man City, etc. So it's probably the best part for their development now to be here. And I can't see, unless it was a bigger club offering a bit of game time, that anyone would want to go. But if you're looking at people like Ruben and Joel and please, you're talking probably teams that have either been relegated from the Premier League in the top end of the Championship or the lower ends of the Premier League. That's where their sort of aspirations are probably hitting at the minute. Because I don't see them just going into a Championship club.
No, I think if it's going to be a Championship club, like you said, it's going to be someone to be recently relegated. Like, say, for example, Leeds got relegated. I think they're doing a bit better this season than last, as far as I'm aware. But there's loads of other clubs in the Premier League now where you got your Nottingham Forest, your West Ham. I mean, they got Nuno now, and I think they might be all right. But there's teams down the bottom end that weren't down there before. Like even Fulham, Fulham have fallen off. Christ, when they went up last, I don't think many people expect them to stay up, if I'm being honest. But then you have the Portuguese sort of influence, just like Wolves had. But hey, Wolves again, they're struggling, and isn't that who we went up with last the Premier League? As Wolves and who else? Fulham. I'm pretty sure it was, isn't it?
I think you're right.
Yeah, because the one team we missed 2 penalties against. Flashbacks, but we were just to beat Wolves. But it's crazy how I'm thinking we were a couple points off staying up in the Premier League, and moving swiftly on to that, talking about a cup draw, the revenge game against Chelsea home. Back to that game, if we had won that game in the Premier League, we probably would have stayed up. But now, all these years later, where they got a complete new squad, different manager and everything, new owners. Probably time for revenge, maybe. What do you reckon our chances? Is it probably it's too early to comment because it's in December, I think. But do you reckon we'll give a good game, or?
I'm obviously Cardiff City fan massively, and I want to say, reality would set in and say that their squad's ridiculously overspent and thing. What will be very good, and I say this about any sort of Premier League club we come up against, is looking where our players are at. There'll be the sort of game where they'll be putting in players that have been around that sort of age bracket as ours are probably worth 20 to 30 to 40 million pounds. And it'd be nice to see a Joel or a Ruben or a Capaccio up against these, because it can really set your benchmark of where your players are really at. And, I'm not a huge Chelsea fan. I don't really stand the club, to be fair. But it'd be nice to sort of see where we are in our development as well as a club. And you know what? It's about getting a name down the stadium. It's about hopefully getting some more kids in the ground and showcasing that this is what Cardiff City is about, and hopefully generating another generation of fans. There's no aspirations in there in the sense that everyone expects us to lose. But if you get one one game away. Was it Wembley semi-final? Or was that just the final?
I don't know. I think that's just the final. I got a feeling it's just the final, but I can't remember now.
It's just that added carrot in it, But I don't know. As a player, you want to play against the best, and if you're representing your club and you're stepping against like the likes of Chelsea's in a quarter-final of the Carabao Cup, you're doing well, aren't you?
Yeah, I think. Well, no, I think one cup run, I think is perfect because as long as you've got the league side by side, I mean, not to say you want to bin off all the other competitions, but the Virtue Trophy, it's clear that we're not really too keen on focusing on that one. Even though I think we should have still beaten Newport, but again, you bring in loads of youngsters, you don't put that pressure on them. And if I'm being honest, we had enough in that game where we really should have put that one away. But you put that aside, think what, like it's not a high priority, and you kind of move on. And then you look at the Peterborough 1-0 loss. You think like, okay, we really should have won that if we're putting our full team out. And my question for that one is, why did we put our more or less starting team out then? If we didn't look too bothered about it. Now I understand, Simon's mentioned and other people mentioned as well about the traveling, and I get that, and it is tiring. But would you not then say, okay, well, I'm not going to prioritize this game then because you knew the game was coming up, and you think maybe that was a chance to add a few more youngsters just to sprinkle them in, just to give a few of your key players rest, like your Ruben Colwell's, your Joel Bagans, especially because he hasn't really got competition. I thought maybe Parfitt would have played instead of him, and I would have liked if Bagan was nowhere near the squad in the best way possible because he's just playing too many games. And I think one thing I worry about is with all this cup games, especially, is that we've still got a very small squad, and that was just in reference to the league. Never mind, the cup games. And yeah, it's all right to say you're going to play the kids, but there's only so many of them you can bring up at the same time as well, isn't it?
No, you're right, and I think a lot of it's down to making sure that the players, the more games they get together, the more comfortable they're in this sort of playing style and environment. There's that. I'm pretty sure the players are probably chomping at the bit to get these sort of games because they're all going to want to play against the Wrexham, and they're all going to want to play against the Chelsea, for example. What I do think as well is that Carabao Cup has actually been a great distraction in the sense that it's taken away the fans' sort of views on what's going on the pitch. Because if we weren't in the Cup and we didn't have those couple of results, it would have looked pretty shit, to be fair, the past couple of games, wouldn't it? But it really sends a distraction. But it also sets a benchmark of what Cardiff City can do. Yeah. Wrexham, crap club, but they've invested a hell of amount, and yet we've turned them over in their place, and you have to, you reap the rewards, but the other side of it is you've got to take the criticism when it's happened. But I think Brian is the sort of guy that, he wants to sort of satisfy the fans. He understands the sort of benchmark that we're at, but the problem is that when those players go over that white line mentality and application, and you can't say that some of the mentality was absolutely right at Wrexham, the application was fine. But would you say that exactly the same at Bolton and some of the other games? Probably not, and you can't change that. It's not something you school into them, but I think it's probably something they're looking at, and maybe that's why he's tinkering it, quite a lot. But
yeah, I think for me, like, I understand you want to prioritize again as always quality over quantity. I think we could do with like another 5 bodies in January. I know that's probably not realistic, but I mean, we've already discussed numerous times, and other hosts have on the channel, about how much we need a left back. It's a paramount position now at this point, and I think we could do with a backup striker, but I just think we need bodies everywhere just to cover us. And I understand, you want to keep the squad very tight and to its core, so you don't lose the closeness of it. But at some point, you've got to sort of say, okay, well, that might be all well and good, but we're only a couple injuries away of not being able to keep that closer tightness because they won't end up being training with us. I mean, I think Olitana's now back training with the first team I don't want to quote that, but I've seen videos of him sort of like training on his own and running and getting back up to speed. But he's going to be at least another couple months before he's going to be back up to match sharpness at least. And then you talk, Eli King, he's not no time soon, let's say. And Alex Robertson's only just come back, and you think with him, right? Even though he's been fit for a bit, I'm not sure how long, but he wasn't chucked straight back in. So, there is danger to adding loads of bodies in because you can disrupt the harmony of the squad. But at the same time, you've got to have those players ready to make an impact, whether it's cup games or whatever. Because, I know they say about chop and changing, but there's almost always going to be chopping and changing of the season. That's just part of the game. It's a lot on the players to do. But yeah, I'm not sure if we have anything else to say about
that. I would just like us to see having a little bit of experience in the squad.
that.
It's just a couple of players that have sort of been there or done it. Like the time we bought in Bamber and Hoylett. Someone a midfield general that just when games get a bit shitty and messy, someone that just knows how to cool it down. And I don't think we're that far away, but I just think something like that, just a couple of leaders around the club that can just guide this young group through. I think that's all we're lacking. Listening to Sean Morrison at the recent event, and that was something he spoke about very well. And he spoke about the changing rooms and what Cardiff City had. And to be fair, we've got an abundance of quality in that squad. And you look around and you're looking, right, where are the real leaders? And not the real leaders that are like potential to be leaders, or the leaders that, have a C on their shoulder, but actually people that have been there through promotions, have got X amount of games, have been when sort of the crappier clubs and have to get their, roll their socks up and their sleeves and get into the dirty side. I don't really see that at the moment. And I think that's part of the side of the game. Sometimes we lack, and I think just maybe a body or two of that, I think would really, really complement what we have at the moment.
Yeah, it's the case of you don't really know what you've got until it's gone, isn't it? It's like back when, 2016, 2017 sort of years, or even earlier, again, that's just my sort of like time I know best, really. And, you look at like, you had a leader every other player on your team, or it almost seemed like any one of those players could have been a leader in a way. I mean, you look at the likes of Aaron Gunnarsson, that's just one name, but you had the back two or back three with, Bruno Lamanga, Bamber, and Morrison, and it's like, it just sort of brought you a lot of, I'd say comfort, but a lot of certainty that like nothing was going to go too wrong with those lads. I mean, like at the same time, they were the kind of like the no nonsense centre backs of just kick it up the pitch sort of thing, get rid of it. And football has adapted to be so much more modern, where there's a lot more ball playing defenders, which does obviously make the fans a bit more nervous, but. I mean, there's pros and cons to that, but
even a Joe Rolls,
yeah,
somebody that just won't accept, substandard performances, someone that won't accept people to drop into second gear, and that's no criticism of the players. It's a learning curve for them. It's a completely different sort of type of fitness. Playing this many games, it must be draining on them mentally. It's different playing in these different environments, different sorts of pressures. Trying to be a young player stepping into a realm where they have the expectation is promotion is a scary environment. You come from 23s to that, and you think, wow, like that is where we're where we're at. And I think Brian sees that, and you can see that they thrive in that environment. We also see he's now evolving his squad to really see the sort of players that will be there or thereabouts. And I think January, I think you'll probably see a few of the sort of 23s probably go out on that loan now to give them that option.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as well that it's not even just that as well of like having the lack of leaders, I suppose, and the pressure to get promoted. It's also a complete new style of play. I mean, the fact is, every time a new manager comes in, even if their philosophy is similar in terms of they both. The previous manager and the current one both likes counter-attacking football. There's going to be a different implementation. There's a different sort of philosophy behind everything. And I know that, obviously, is it Ian Evatt is at Blackpool now, I think? And, like that could go one or two ways, the sort of thing. Like, I know he's one that he's got probably that inner Warnock in him that won't accept lower standards. But at the same time, it didn't work out with Bolton, and Bolton fans weren't happy with him. But it's that uncertainty of not knowing, first of all, if the manager's going to be the right fit, but also, is everyone going to buy behind the project? And it's like, with such younger players, I suppose maybe they might be a bit more, I say naive, but they might be a bit more sort of like motivated to get behind the project, especially if it's a manager they know has been at the level of like Man City, for example. But yeah. What I'm going to do now, I just see there's loads of lovely comments in there. We're just going to go to a word from site and we'll get into loads of them. Just so you know, get your comments in now whilst it's playing. But if you want your comment to guaranteed be read out, then you can leave a super chat. It's not a requirement, but it really does help out. Every little helps, as always. But yeah, I'll be back to you in just a hot second.
This episode of Cardiff City World is brought to you by Coral, the proud sponsor of the TalkSport Fan Network, here for all kinds of fans. For the armchair experts, whether you're constantly negative, overly positive, or maybe even the instant over-the-top reaction social media guy or girl. For the football fashionistas still clinging to the legendary terrace fashion of yesteryear, or the best retro gear from Michael Thorne, the nostalgia merchants, dreaming of the old lady Ninian Park, or still celebrating Campbell's goal in the Millennium Stadium, whatever kind of fan you are, with Coral's free-to-play reward shaker, with a guaranteed daily reward or offer throughout the season, simply shake your phone to win. Over 18s only, maximum one reward or offer per player per day, 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. Reward restrictions and requirements and other T's and C's apply. For more information on safer gambling, visit gambleaware.org.
All right, so I've let the comments build up and purposely ignored them, and I go completely going blind now. See what we got here tonight. Go on, let's start with Jonathan as always. Stevenage behind us have 2 games in hand, but currently losing to Reading. Is that tonight? Is it? Let's have a look. Or was it? Oh, sure. Stevenage. Oh, it is ongoing, right? Okay. 81st minute, and the score is. Let's see if the score is still there. Reading still winning 1-0. Yeah, so that's always helpful for us. We forget sometimes there's other teams in the league that they do drop in form as well, and you think sometimes that you're always sort of chasing number 1 or 2 in the league, but if anything, it's probably not a bad position that we're in third right now, and we got a game in hand. It takes the pressure off a little bit, do you reckon?
Absolutely. It also shows, even the teams like Stevenage that we're expecting, they slip up as well, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's do their slip-ups. Paul says these international breaks don't help. Do you reckon that's the case? I think maybe one of them this season hasn't really helped.
I probably agree, to be fair. It didn't really impact us previously when we didn't have many players within it, but especially when you're on form, you don't really want it to stop. I know Brian said he wanted to, but I don't know. No, not for me. I'm not a huge fan of international football, to be fair. I prefer watching City all the time, but I think Paul's absolutely right there.
Yeah, Graham says, am I reading this right? OT has backfired with Fish and Lawler. Was it OT? Yeah. Sorry.
I think that's just the tinkering of changing the centre half partnerships.
Oh, right.
I'd agree with Graham there. Don't change something that's not broken, and for whatever reason we did, and it backfired, didn't it? How many points I'd like to know how many points we dropped. Sort of changing those 2 players up.
Yes. I don't know if we'll see Osho anytime soon as the starting player, unless maybe cup games, but I think maybe he'll be just sort of like kept out of the firing line for a bit, just to give him chance of forget about all those. I mean, he made a couple of blunders, if I'm being honest, but I think we all know the quality he can bring. I think it's very new, it's very raw, and again, English football is not like any other kind of football. I mean, I'm not saying French football is easy, but it's a different ball game down here.
He'll be integrated. He'll be on the bench.
Yeah, there you are then. Sue says, if Reading and Stevenage can stay like this in a win Saturday for us, we'll nullify the extra games in hand. Yeah, I think so, yeah. So, because they have 2 games in hand. But yeah, if that's the case, that would be handy. I think before we've always preyed on results going our way, especially even when we got promoted. It was Birmingham playing, I think, that got us promoted in that game versus Reading. But yeah, sometimes it's just relying on other people's results, and that's kind of the luck of the draw. Sometimes I just hope that we don't have a bad winter of results, and hope it doesn't mean that if we're trying to fight for automatic playoffs, I hope it doesn't come down to the last few games to rely on other people to drop points. Because if in a dream world, we would love to get a head start now, so that we wouldn't have to be chasing But then again, we've always been that club that does chase the leader.
I'm just worry about your own results. Get your own own ducks in a row. Don't worry about anyone else. We can't control it.
Exactly, yeah. But I say if you win your early games, you don't have to worry about any other teams. Then JT evening, I think we should wear an orange kit at Blackpool Saturday. It would just cause chaos, and that would be awesome. I'm sure there is a little bit of difference, but that would be very interesting. But
I
I
think
don't
that
know
kit's shocking.
which one, our orange kit.
Orange one, I'm not a fan at
Yeah?
all. I
I
just
saw it when it got leaked. It looked a bit odd.
everything about me with kits is it has to symbolise and represent something that we're passionate about. Whether that's a colour or a motif, a quote, and we just look like a bunch of traffic cones. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan, and it probably hampered the performance. To be fair, the other day.
It probably blinded them. Yeah, it should be like, traffic cones. Don't dribble around the cones.
It's definitely a goalkeeping kit at best.
I think it. To be fair, now I look at it now. Right, when I first saw it, I was thinking, "Oh no, please tell me this isn't our kit," because it was kind of leaked, right? But it wasn't a really good picture. It was a low res quality one. This is before I even knew what the away kit looked like. I was thinking, please don't let this be our away kit. I actually look at it more now. I think, you know what? I don't mind it, but there's something that really bothers me of just doesn't continue on the sleeves and the shoulders, and that for some reason that's always bothered me with all kits. It just doesn't look natural. But yeah, I don't know about that one. But anyway, let's have a look. Who else is here? Paul, be glad when this month's internationals are done. At least there is a gap until the next one. Hard to get momentum with all that stop start. Yeah, it is hard, but sometimes it can come at a good time as well. So let's not forget that. It's just it's sod's law, isn't it? Like sometimes it comes in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. JT says League One is breaking into mini leagues. Top 8 are breaking away from 9th. Yeah, well, you start to see roughly now. I mean, I did not expect Wimbledon out of all teams to be at the top. If I'm being honest, I had them towards relegation if I put right in my predictions. But yeah, it's still way too early, isn't it? Not, but at the same time, you start to see where teams, which teams are going to be fighting relegation this season and which teams are going to be mid-table and whatnot. I guess it's still too early though, because there's 7 points between Peterborough, who are bottom, and Northampton, who are 17th. So that's 2 games. That's 2 wins and a draw. It sounds like a lot, but all it takes is for a couple of the mid-table teams to lose the next 2 games, and then all of a sudden it's all to play for again, isn't it?
No, you're absolutely right. It's a very strange league. It's very different because you look at the quality at the top and you think, you probably see 2 or 3 of them pulling away, but then you'd expect some of the teams in the middle of the pack to be sort of pushing on, don't you? I don't know. It's a crazy league, mate.
It is, yeah. I mean, we say about the championship, but I think it's no different in that way. Jonathan says Blackpool invested well in the summer as well, and they've been awful. Yeah, no, I think a lot of people predicted Blackpool to be up there. I think I did. I think I predicted them to finish 7th or something, but for whatever reason, it just didn't click. I guess you could say the same about Wrexham sometimes, of you can recruit really well, and again, I think Huddersfield's another one. Maybe they will click at some points, but if recruitment, we could say we recruited well. Last season, think of all the players we bring in and think, oh, this is great. And then what happened? We got relegated because we just signed players who hadn't played football in ages, who had a bad injury record or just hadn't hit the heights that they hit before, or they just weren't really that interested. And whilst it looked good on paper, the signings we were making, we got like El Ghazi and Chris Willock, Callum Chambers, and everything. It's like it didn't exactly all click, and look where we are now, isn't it?
Blackpool's quite a weird one. So they're pretty much around the bottom end of the table, haven't they? And their goal difference is -9.
The 23rd, yeah.
I'm pretty sure they've won their sort of past couple of games, haven't they? Is it a couple?
They've
drawn
against Wickham at home, and then they beat Peterborough 2-1 away. Then, but if I'm being honest, that wasn't. Well, I mean, let's be fair. Was that their first game under Luke Williams? Maybe then for Peterborough, possibly. So yeah, they've just started building momentum. So
I'm pretty sure they've only lost to Stockport in the past 5, if I remember correctly.
No, they've lost to AFC Wimbledon as well, but that
Okay.
well, that was 2-0 that was. But so they've lost 2, drawn 2, and won their recent game. So it's not terrible. It's not terrible form. I mean, look at some others. I mean, look at Huddersfield. They lost the last 3 games. They won and drawn, and the next game's against Plymouth. So who knows? I mean, the only team we could consider is in really good form right now is Stockport, and they've won 4 out of their 5 and drawn the other game, and they're top. I mean, it doesn't. It makes complete sense, right? But yeah, I mean, look at the if you were to look at the table, which I've got here, which I'll explain for you. There's only been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that have lost 3 games or less, and that is the top 5 teams right now, and it speaks volumes. I mean, there's loads of teams there that are drawing lots of games, and they're way further down. And I think that was our problem last season, is that whilst we did lose a lot of games, we also drew a lot of games as well, and we just you don't really learn much from a draw, if I'm being honest, because it's the real kick in the teeth when you actually lose games that kicks you into gear, I find.
I don't think I'm not a fan of draws. I think it should be like hockey, where one way or the other, one team has to win.
Yeah,
it has to be.
I think it's just especially come the end of the season when you have not much to play for, and it's just a draw sort of thing. It's like fans don't want to come to pay and see that. I mean, I have friends before. They say they're never football fans, and the pure reason is because they said you could go to a game, right? You can come home and say, "Oh, that was a really great game," and you finished 0-0. And it's like I said, yeah, you are right. Sometimes games finish 0-0, and they're a really good cracking game, and there's loads of tension, and everything, right? And my friends never understand that. And they say that's why I'll never become a football fan, is because I don't want to pay my hard-earned money that I earn from work just to go see a 0-0 draw. I don't care how exciting you might say it'd be. Nothing will get me excited for that, which I can completely understand. I thought our 0-0 game against West Brom on the day we got relegated, I thought that was a major improvement in performance-wise. But at the end of the day, it counted for nothing anyway. But yeah, I do agree with that. Maybe sudden death would be good, or I don't know, next goal wins, but you'd have to change it then.
Drop to 10 players or no goalkeeper, something silly.
Yeah, every 5 minutes, remove a player off a team, like at random. That'd be good. Sue's got early score predictions in for Saturday. Fancy us for a 1-3 win? I'm assuming you mean 3-1 win. Oh, no, because we're away, aren't we? We're away, yeah. Wait, no, we're away or home?
Away.
Hang on. We're away, aren't we? Christ,
We came in that for last time of year.
Oh, God, we're not home for a while, man, honestly. Oh, God, I've got rid of the chat in a second. BBM over Everts. Yeah, I mean, I think even Blackpool fans probably agree with that. And no disrespect, but yeah, I don't see, when I hear the links of Everts, like I heard not a single positive word about him from Bottom fans. I was like, well, please don't let this be true.
Genuinely gave me vibes when I heard about it.
Really, yeah? Oh, God, because I think a lot of people think, oh, yeah, he's just got that inner Warnock about him. But there's a way of doing it right, of like just shouting at players to get results and having high standards. There's so many managers, they lose their head all the time, but they don't pick up the results. It's like, it's one thing to be a drill sergeant to your team, but you got to understand your players and what they respond to as well. And I don't know, if he does well, great, but let us beat them.
When dealing with people over the summer who worked and work with Everett, there was a lot of positive about him behind the scenes with how he manages players and what he does for players' welfare and stuff. There was a lot of that. But the fans' opinion was absolutely completely opposite, and it was a really bonkers time, because you'd sit there and you listen to these feedbacks, and it almost felt a bit like the Omar Reza situation. You'd have the sort of players on side, but you wouldn't get the fans on side. And I think I did everything I could to pray that that we'd have a different sort of manager. But it's a very interesting one, because I can't wait to Saturday just to see how he sort of sets up and how he plays against us,
I got something here. Sorry. I got something here to refer from earlier on. Ian Dalglish 1241 says, genuinely think Dylan Lawler goes 8 figures in the next 2 years. Is that wages or market value? Can see a relegated Prem team looking at him when he's got games in his legs. What do you reckon?
Well, the reality is, mate, can you name a better British centre half that's that age? I can't think of many.
Not many, no.
And if you're talking about players that are that sort of age, what sort of value talking? 20, 30 million minimum? Well, why is it any difference? Because it's Cardiff City, Some of these sort of players, whether they're in the Championship or what, are commanding massive fees. Look at people like Callum Chambers and that when they were younger. They attracted some very, very good fees. And what Dylan's got is he's a ball playing centre half.
Yeah,
He's an international. He's had a man of the match on his debut. And genuinely, and like also from our backgrounds, when you're looking at recruiting players, it's all about their attitude, their application, their family, how they school themselves. And Dylan's one of the most humble guys you can meet. That kid will, genuinely, when he's at the top, because it's not a case of if, it'll be when, his feet will still remain on the floor, and that's the greatest thing about it. I would be surprised if he went for anything less than 15 minutes. I genuinely believe it.
Hopefully, I hope he does stay. But at least if we do sell him, we're not going to get rid of him on the cheap, because it'd just be such Cardiff old Cardiff history fashion when they're not selling players on the cheap. But hopefully that's changing now. Didn't Watford do back-to-back the Prem, and then Norwich and Ipswich have both done back-to-back League One to Prem, I think. Yeah, we're going to follow in their footsteps, hopefully. But I don't. I mean, the future's way too far off yet to predict. But I don't know if we got enough just yet to do back-to-back promotions. Again, we'll just focus on this league for now. But I don't know. You just look. Some teams just clicks right. They just find that manager, and it's always the manager that will be the cause because of it. Yeah, they'll have great quality players, but I mean, look, how often do you see Kieran McKenna come along? That's his name, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's not often, is it? He could have gone to any club, and I'm sure, obviously, there was this quality at the clubs as well that he could have gone to any of those who happened to be Ipswich. Not to disrespect anything to take away from them, but he could have done that to possibly a Wigan or someone else who had, it's like a fallen giant, possibly. So look. Oh, okay. There we go. I might have seen this. Are we going into this?
If you want to.
Have to. I know we briefly mentioned it before, but I'm not really much in the know of this situation as much. So, yeah. I'm not sure if you're best explaining it to me because I'm a bit behind in the trends. Living under a rock recently. I know that he came back with something to do with his dog, and that's pretty much as much as I know.
From what I've heard, is his dog was kidnapped when out in Mexico from a kennel. I think there was a reward from what I've seen on social media, but it hasn't happened. I think it's a very interesting one because I've seen the rumour mills already are talking about will Ramsey come back, etc. Is it would be the right thing? I think Cardiff City now are looking past that, and there's a new direction we're taking on. And the problem you've got is that, and I think the reason that they changed their coaching staff so vividly this year was that it was a clear direction under a young up and coming manager who would grow into his own role. There would be no influence from the other coaches that have been there amongst other regimes and different sort of coaching setups. It's a complete sort of overall, isn't it? I can't see, and I also believe that with the senior group, the decision to get rid of rules would have created that sort of thing. It's a completely different sort of group as such, and I don't think they would probably bring Ramsey back in that capacity. He doesn't fit the style of play. He would sort of, as much as he's got that great experience and he's a Cardiff fan, would it stop the development of people like Ruben Colwell, that sort of stuff? Can we afford that sort of stuff? It's a shame, because he's been a great servant to Cardiff and Wales, but what's next for him? His injury record doesn't speak well for himself. He would want to be a professional footballer.
I mean, I love Aaron to bits, honestly, and I've spoken to him twice briefly, but and he's just such a sound guy. But I can't see it working. You just summed it perfectly. There's just too much now that you feel like. At what point does it feel like you're kind of pulling yourself, holding other players back? And again, it's not like intentional. It's just naturally. I think if you were to bring someone like Ramsey back, let's say, like Ruben Colwell has already been captain on day one of the season, and without even being into it, you will cast a big shadow over Ruben Colwell because obviously Aaron Ramsey comes back. But I think also you got to be realistic of I understand he did take a big wage cut from what I've heard, but at the same time, it's a guy you're paying who you're probably not going to get many games out of. And if it's a pay-as-you-play basis, it's not going to be cheap either.
Do you think he's the sort of player that would join the the sort of the theatre up north at Wrexham? Would he be that sort of Welsh captain? Historically, there's a bit of a story that they can play on that.
No, I don't think
That would be the only way I could see.
Cardiff is his. Sorry, go on.
And you're absolutely right. I just think if he still wants to get to the World Cup, he's going to have to find somewhere where he's playing. I assume he'd probably want to be closer to home. How many clubs? What's local that can offer him? Bristol City. He's a Cardiff fan. He's not going to drop down the league to Newport. Further of the bridges.
Merthyr.
But,
Penabont.
It's a strange one, but.
And Ramsey joins Penabont on a free.
I'm good friends with him. He would love that. And a few of the guys. Not sure about.
I'm sure they watch it now and be like, "Yeah, come on!" Now the CCFC World are ruining it. We increase our chances.
I know. I'm no Spud, the fitness coach as well. I don't think he'd enjoy every week.
Like, on Christ, you're working overtime. I will.
Take the tape at him, but no. It's a strange one. That one. Just like where he would end up.
I think it sort of sums up his international career as well, of wanting to play and make one more World Cup. But it's kind of you're living on a prayer in terms of like you got to it's one of the hardest things, right? And as a coach myself, is sometimes you've got to have difficult conversations or sit down and make difficult decisions in your life, and you got to understand what your body is saying and when you have to sort of say, you know what, I've had a great career. Albeit, some injuries have held me back, but aside from that, I mean, one of Wales's best, and he's had such a good. I mean, consider it obviously his injury record. And I think he's had such a good career, and I mean, like, look, he's a well-known name round all of Europe, and not just Europe, internationally as well. But I just think at this point, you just say, you know what, I've had a good career. And I think it's time now that I either take a break or look at my next options. I genuinely think he should probably take a break, take a year off or so, and I know you'd want to work with a Welsh squad with Bellamy at some points, and I think they'd be a great duo together. Because I'm sure, obviously, Bellamy's also been mentoring him, passively here and there. But I just think at some point, as hard as it is, it's easy for me to say because I'm not the player. But like at some point, you'd be like, I gotta hang my boots up now because I'm only going to be a liability. I
would agree with that. I think this is probably his last half a season.
Yeah, I know. I don't. To me, I don't understand the move to Mexico. I kind of get it in terms of like, end your career in the MLS or somewhere else like that, right? But to me, the move to Mexico did not make sense to me. And look, I don't know. I'm sure you can't really say much about the situation, what actually unfolds. But like, to me, that seemed a little bit like allegedly, in my opinion, it seemed a bit of a spite move in terms of the fact that things couldn't be negotiated well at Cardiff. I felt like he needs to just get away and go somewhere else and kind of forget about it at the same time. Again, that's my opinion. I'm not saying that to be true ever. It's completely just what I think. That's the impression I get, but I don't take anything off that because I know what he's done for the club. So
there's two sides to every story.
Exactly,
the way I would try and describe it as honestly as I could, it would be that both wanted the best for the club, both had different opinions on what the best for the club was, and probably what both were looking at wanting and offering. That's probably where you're looking at. But Ramsey's been a great servant for the club. He's a massive Cardiff City fan, and he stepped in at a time where we really needed him. So great there. Who says that Rambo doesn't come back in the future? We don't know.
No, but I would love him as a future.
I think he does get a lot of unfair criticism, but people that know what really happened with the sort of dealings and stuff, just it's down to the club to get the best for the club, and it's down to the player to get the best for the player.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just the case. It just work out. If I'm being honest, I'm glad that they didn't try and force something to happen because as much as it would have been a great story on paper, for me, I think it was too early. I think we needed to sort of draw a line. I'm always saying today, what the hell? I was coming out and draw a line into the sand and everything and just sort of start afresh and I feel like BBM was a great appointment. I think obviously it could have been other people as well, but you look at having a reset and you go for someone who's youth focused. I mean, it just makes complete sense, which is a nice change. But yeah, I think probably best move on from the Rams talk. But I'm just glad sort of brought it up because I was very in the dark about it. We only got, oh my God, we got 5 minutes. Like, okay, we have been almost an hour. I will treat you guys to the hour because we started a bit late. People getting the predictions in. Is that 2 different predictions now? Oh, Reading. Sorry, it's the Reading game. Reading 1-0 by the looks of it. So that's helped us definitely.
Well, mine that Charlie Savage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That would be all right, wouldn't it?
He looks a player, doesn't he?
He's been at the club for quite a few years now, hasn't he? Where was he before?
He's achieved 100 games, I think I read it.
Christ alive. So he's been there a fair bit then. Let's have a look at their score on series. Don't think BBM is planning many players in January. On Radio Sound interview today, he was saying how this squad, it's hard keeping the players he's got happy with game time. I think, I think, again, that's him being a young manager as well. It's like, I understand that because, again, as a coach, it is hard, but when you're young, you sort of feel for those players a lot more because there isn't as much. I mean, he's older than the players. I just think of, he still probably remembers how he felt about trying to get game time and he wants to keep everyone happy. I understand that, but team sports in general is just a ruthless sort of game, and football is a very unforgiving. Football's such an unforgiving sport.
There's a couple of things to consider there. He said when he first joined the club that he wanted to give players an opportunity and time. That was the first thing. The second thing is that I know for a fact they are looking at adding quality.
Yeah.
The reality is that it's only when players become available that you start looking at moving players out and obviously disrupting the harmony. I can tell you now there is, and there always will be, looking at it, but there's obviously contingency plans if big bids come in for players, contingency plans if a certain player comes available or the manager wants something. But the manager also knows that Cardiff City have to get promoted this year. That's the expectation in the club. So you put those 3 things together. I think he's a very good poker player, isn't he? Brian.
He doesn't reveal much, does he?
You can trust him with what he's saying, but he's got things up his sleeves, and no one would have known about Kellyman or Charlton players like that. There will be, depending on where we are, there will be. If we're top 3 or 4, there will be additions. Everything I hear is that they are looking for real quality. If that real quality becomes available, they will take it.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, they have a plan B and a plan C. Obviously, like you just said, then depending on whatever situation happens. And I think I just obviously my always worry is the fact that because of the injuries we've had in previous seasons, like they haven't come, touch wood, as intense this season, but the few that we have made a real impact. I think Oli Tanner is just such a big one. A few games into the season, he started looking really good then, thinking, oh yeah, this is the Tanner we could sort of see playing well in the Championship as well. And, like Tanner had a lot of hype, for example, just pick on him for at random. He was one that was kind of like, when he scored that Swansea goal, there was sort of like this big extra pressure on him then to think, oh yeah, he's going to be the next player for us. But, with him injured now, again, it's going to take him a long time to get back to match sharpness. Do you bring in then another winger then in January who, is firing to go, and then when Tanner comes back, then he's got another place to compete with. And again, that's automatically that's going to disrupt a bit of the harmony. Now, I'm sure there's, plans in place to stop that getting too thin for the team, but it's hard because if you don't get a player in, and pray on that player getting fit and it all working out, then it's great if it happens. But what happens then if you don't cover and then...
There's one slight amendation to the mentality element. It was something that I was taught when I did my degree, was that your mindset at the beginning of the season shifts in transition to the second part of the season. So at the beginning of the season, it's game time. It's about trying to get your face there. It's enjoying the sun. It's about playing and whatever. As soon as it gets to January, it's when players start worrying about being sold. It's about players start worrying about where they are in the league. And you start to become, at the beginning of the season, you're very individually driven. It's all personal accolades, it's personal goals. Whereas at the end of the season, you start to see the carrot of actually promotion and a medal. And that's where you get your togetherness. And I think at that point, that's when you can start to integrate a few players. Whereas I think Brian's very clever, and I think he's probably well versed in this sort of stuff. But you'll probably see a few of the youngsters probably go out on loan, and that's probably where the additions may sort of start to creep in then.
Yeah, I'll finish with this one then after saying that. YPS3 says the game time issue might be in certain roles minds. We have options in some roles, but not in others. I think, yeah, there's certain sort of red flags thinking that we really do lack that depth. And I just say the thing is that we could be one injury away from massively changing how we played out. Well, if Bagan gets injured now, do we move Capaccio to the left, or do we keep him there in his prime position and introduce someone like TJ Parfitt, or do we have other players who their secondary position is a left back? It's like, what would you do there if someone like Bagan got injured before January?
Well, Capaccio is the option at the minute, and that's what they're doing, aren't they? They're playing that shift. Do I think it's the long-term option for this season? No. You can clearly see that it's a band-aid as such, and it's not the solution. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's got to be the one position they're definitely looking at, some sort of coverage.
You'd like to think.
But no, it's great that they're flexible, but being flexible and being able to cover things doesn't mean you're great. And also, you don't want to break up those partnerships you've got. Capaccio's doing very well on that right-hand side, working well with whoever plays on the right. So you don't want to change that as such.
Yeah, well, we haven't played Turnbull left back yet. You never know. It might turn out into his next greatest position. So, well, hey, you can't go much further back if you put him a left back. I mean, the goalkeeper, never mind, scratch that idea. Anyway, thanks all for joining tonight. Will Spears, I'll say this, will Spears be recalled if Begum was injured? Well, Will Spears, I think he's more of a right back, isn't he not? He could probably play either side, couldn't he? But I think that's another one. I mean, if Will Spears could be recalled, maybe TJ Parfitt gets a nod before him. I don't know. But it's all I'll see.
Brian's obviously sent up the players who don't feature within this squad this year. He will not disrupt their harmony of having that development. He would rather go out and get some. Fair
enough. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But anyway, thanks all. Hours gone by. God, that was fairly quick actually. Thanks all for getting involved in the comment section again tonight. As always, it really does help. If ever anything, it makes it part of the show. That's why I sort of let the comments build up a bit, and then after the ad break, we come to lovely comments. After the video's ended, drop your comments below as well, please, because it really helps with engagement and the algorithm. Drop who you think either your predicted 11 is for the Blackpool game, or what score predictions you have, or both if you just want to be extra. Again, if you're not a member already, please do become a member. I see loads of lovely green names in there tonight. So if you're not already, you can go to the links are there, but you can have a look across the screen as well. And it's Patreon or YouTube, you can become a member. So thanks very much. Thank you, Aaron, for joining me as always.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. I'll see you all soon.
This channel is powered by an incredible membership community on Cardiff City World and patreon.com/AcePodcastNation. Becoming a member unlocks exclusive rewards from early access to live event tickets, bonus content, and even the occasional inside transfer scoop when we get it. But more importantly, it allows us to bring you top quality Cardiff City content 7 days a week. Across those 7 days, we're talking match previews, exclusive interviews, instant match reactions, the breakdown podcast, tactical deep dives, the spotlight series, Bluebirds Rewind, Academy Focus, and just so much more. Led by myself, backed by an army of passionate Cardiff City fans, this is content created by fans for fans. Balanced, professional, and 100% all about the club we all love. If you enjoy what we do, then join the community today and support what we are doing as we help to keep Cardiff City World flying high.